The path is the goal. Why you can't separate them, Buddhism. I think it was Ajahn Chah who said that the path is like a mango. It doesn't have a beginning. It doesn't have an end that you can point to and say, this is where you are now and you're going to move over someplace else. You basically stay right here. Just as the mango stays in one place on the tree as it ripens, your practice will ripen in that way too. We do have a goal in the practice. Our goal is to put an end to suffering, but we have to learn how to relate to that goal in the right way. There is the pain that the Buddha calls renunciate pain, where you realize that it is possible to put an end to suffering, but you're not there yet. Other people have done it, but you haven't done it yet. It's a painful thought, but it's part of our motivation. We can't let that pain overwhelm us. We have to remember that when the goal is found, it's going to be found right here. So it's a question of learning how to settle in properly right here. And if you don't like the idea of a goal hanging over your head, remind yourself that a large part of settling right in here is learning to find something that's pleasing right here. As the Buddha said, you want to find a sense of ease, a sense of pleasure, a sense of rapture, and indulge in it. So you get to choose. What kind of breathing feels good right now? When you find something that seems promising, hold on to it. Stick with it, because it'll develop. It's not the case that when rapture hits, it hits out of nowhere 100%. It grows on you gradually. The same with the pleasure. It grows on you. In the beginning, it's not all that impressive, but you can ask yourself, what can I do to make it feel at least a little bit better? What kind of breathing would I like right now? This is a large part of the concentration practice. Finding something you like. You're not doing this because anyone else told you. As Ajahn Fuang liked to say, we're nobody's servant. We're not here because anybody paid us or gave us permission to practice. We're here because we want to. So what would make you want to stay in the present moment? What kind of breathing, what kind of sense of pleasure in the body would make you want to stay? Steer the breath in that direction. Dogen, the Zen master, made the comment one time that the development of the path is no different from the realization of the cessation of suffering. In other words, it's not the case that the act of developing the path is one thing, and the act of realizing the cessation is something else. There's not going to be a place in the path where you have to drop the path and turn to the question of, where is the cessation of suffering, and how do I realize that? It's going to be found right here in the act of developing the path. Everything you need to know is going to be found right here. So even though we do have a goal at the end of the path, and it will come at its point in time, it's not here at the moment. You're going to find it right here. So have a sense of what's just right as you're settling down. This is a point that Ajahn Fuang made a lot of. That sama in sama samadhi, right concentration, has to be understood as just right, because you need to balance a lot of things. You think about the breath and then you evaluate it. Now, the evaluation does involve thinking, asking questions, making comments. It may seem like a disturbance, but it's actually an important part of adjusting things inside so that they feel good. Ajahn Lee's image is of holding onto a post and running around it. As long as you keep your grasp on the post really solid, really firm, you can run around the post as many times as you want and you don't get dizzy. But if you spin around outside without holding on to anything, you get dizzy really fast and fall on your face. So you're going to be thinking about this one thing, the breath. Content yourself with the fact that whatever pleasure you're going to find out of the practice is going to be found right here. Whatever sense of fulfillment you're going to find in the practice will be found right here. So adjust things. Make sure the breath is not too long, too short, too deep, too shallow. Have it just right. Then adjust your mind. This is where the steps in breath meditation come in the third tetrad. If you notice that the mind has too much energy, what do you do to steady it, to concentrate it? If it has too little energy, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling discouraged. What can you do to uplift it, gladden it? This requires directed thought and evaluation too. Sometimes the breath will perform that function of steadying or gladdening. Other times, you've got to think about other things, topics that will give more energy to the mind, or topics that will steady the mind. The ones that give energy are the things like recollection of your virtue, recollection of your generosity, recollection of the devas, realizing that the qualities that make a person into a deva are qualities that you have in yourself, so you're headed in the right direction. That can lift you up. Things that steady you are contemplation of the body in terms of its different parts. After all, if lust or desire is pulling you away, what is there? Which part of the body are you lusting after? The liver, the stomach, contents of the stomach, the blood, the lymph, the lungs? None of those things. Or you can think about the themes of inconstancy, the themes of not self. Those can often steady the mind. When the mind has been chastened a bit like this, then it's ready to settle down. So you are thinking. There is the disturbance of the thinking, but it's a necessary disturbance. This is what you find with all the levels of concentration, that as you go from one level to another, there's a disturbance in the first level that you're going to be letting go of when you get to the next. But you have to let go at the right time, because those disturbances in the earlier levels of concentration actually perform a function. When you need your directed thought and evaluation, it's because the mind and the breath are not fitting together quite right, so you've got to think about them. Look at them. Examine them. Use your ingenuity in getting them to fit together. It's like putting together a chest of drawers. If the drawers don't fit quite right, they're a little bit hard to get in, hard to get out. Which parts do you sand? You sand them just right. If you sand them too much, they get loose. You work on them so that they're just right, and the different parts will fit together just right. Then you can drop the directed thought and evaluation, and can be nourished by the sense of ease, the sense of rapture that come from being focused. As long as you need that rapture to give you energy, you stick with it. There will come a time, though, when it feels like too much. You don't need it anymore. That's when you let go. It's in this way that each of these factors performs its function, and then you can put it aside. Ajahn had the image of a rocket going to the moon. As he said, you need the booster to take you part of the way, and then you have to drop the booster. Then there's the second stage, and when it's done its job, you drop that. But you have to know exactly when is the right time to drop them. You learn that by trial and error, but it's all a matter of settling in right here and asking yourself, what feels really good? Which feels better? You're learning to become a connoisseur of your concentration, a connoisseur of your breath, a connoisseur of the potentials in the present moment. Then, as with any connoisseur, you can indulge your sense of what feels really good. There's no objective standard out there saying that your breath has to be like this, or the place you focus has to be right there. You can focus anywhere in the body you want. You can take pleasure in any kind of breathing you like. No one's imposing this on you. This is your expression of freedom. People who have trouble living with goals usually have a problem right there. The goal is being imposed on them by somebody else. Somebody else is out there with a measuring stick, and they feel they have to deny their own pleasure in the present moment to meet up with somebody else's standards. But here the standards are set by your sense of what feels right in the present moment. If you stay with it long enough and you're honest enough with yourself, then your sense of what's right, what's just right, will get more refined. And it's in the refinement that your discernment gets developed. You think of the path. The image the Buddha gives is of the continental shelf off of India. There's a gradual slope as you go out, and then a sudden drop. The gradual slope is the gradual development of your discernment as you get more and more discerning as to what's just right. Remember, this is the middle way, and finding the just right point in the middle is a lot harder than going to extremes. With extremes, you just push. It doesn't require much discernment, but finding and maintaining the just right point in the middle, that requires a lot of discernment. You're going to be going back and forth to find it, but your sensitivity gets more and more focused with time. And a large part of the motivation is that it's really pleasing. It feels really right. Not just pleasant, but right. The mind settles down where you have a feeling it really should be right here. Again, not because anybody told you, because after all, how is anybody going to tell you where you are? You know yourself. So let your own sensitivity, your own desire for a sense well-being in the present moment, be your guide. That way, you'll find that you've reached the goal without even thinking about it. Some of the Ajahns talk about making your body the path. This is how you do it. You stay right here. You simply get better and better at finding a way to enjoy staying just right here. If you follow that direction, you're sure to arrive at the goal. Everything comes together right here. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths. Where do you feel the breath? Try to be with that sensation and with nothing else. Ride the sensation all the way in, all the way out. If you're going to do any thinking, think about the breath. Think about that sensation. We're trying to get the breath in and of itself, which means that we're putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. Any thoughts about the world outside, just put them aside right now. They don't belong here. You just want that sensation. Thoughts of sensuality, thoughts of anger, thoughts of whatever. Think of them as being like clouds. They can come by and they can go away. They don't have to have much substance. We're the ones who give them substance. We turn them into worlds, what the Buddha calls becoming. If you get into a becoming like that, you've gone astray. When we're working on the concentration, even though concentration is a state of becoming, we're focusing on the raw materials, just the breath, just your mind talking to itself about the breath. There will also be a perception you hold in mind, an image you hold in mind about the breath, and then the feeling. How does the breath feel right now? Does it feel comfortable? The Buddha talks about perception and feeling as being mental fabrications because of the impact they have on the mind, but they also have an impact on the breath. The way you picture the breath to yourself will have an impact on how it feels and where the sensations are that you notice. Since developing a heart condition, I've discovered that the breath sensations in the area around the heart can be very complex. They're like a maze. As you breathe in, some of the breath sensations inside the heart seem to be going up. Others seem to be going down. You want to make sure you don't get in their way. Now, you may notice that, or you may notice other things in your sensation of the breath in the body right now. You may find other areas in the body that are complex for you. The important thing is that you're really sensitive to what's going on. sensitive to what feels good, and also sensitive to how your perceptions might be getting in the way of its feeling even better. This is why Ajahn Fuang said that when you meditate, you're playing. You play with your sensations. You play with your perceptions. In other words, you try different things out. One of the instructions he often used was, use your imagination. Another was, be observant. If, as you breathe in, there are parts of the body where the breath energy seems to go up and running against something, well, think of it going down. Maybe it shouldn't be going up. Maybe your perception is forcing it up. So as you see, even though you're with the sensation of breathing, other things are going on as well. You're thinking about the breath, you're experimenting, you're evaluating things. But it's all gathered around this one sensation. And that's what matters. The word the Buddha uses for a concentrated mind, ikaga or ekagata, means basically having one gathering spot. There are different activities going around in the mind, but they're all gathered around here. Look at his list of the factors of the first jhana. Singleness of preoccupation, directed thought, evaluation, pleasure, rapture. 5 things. But what keeps them from being 5, what makes them 1, is the fact they're all gathered around the one object, the singleness of preoccupation. The other factors are there at that spot, helping things along. You might be saying to yourself, I thought we were talking about mindfulness, and now we're talking about jhana. The Buddha doesn't make a clear distinction between the two. In the description of the first jhana, he says, you're secluded from sensuality and from unskillful thoughts. Well, think about that passage where the Buddha's talking about mindfulness, comparing it to the quail that wanders away from its field and gets caught by the hawk. As it's being carried off, it laments, "Oh, my lack of merit! If only I'd stayed in my ancestral territory, my ancestral range. This hawk would have been no match for me." The hawk gets a little peeved. Here's this little pipsqueak of a quail bragging. So he lets him go and says, "Okay, go to your ancestral territory, but you won't escape me there." So the quail flies down. His ancestral territory is a field that's been newly ploughed with the stones turned up. He stands on one of the stones and he starts taunting the hawk. "Come get me, you hawk. Come get me, you hawk." The hawk swoops down, and when the quail see that it's coming at full speed, it hides behind the stone, and the hawk shatters its breast on the stone. As the Buddha said, the field there stands for the 4 establishing of mindfulness. The area outside of the field stands for thoughts of sensuality. All too often, we hear that mindfulness is a matter of just letting the mind go wherever it's going to go. You simply keep track of where it's wandering. You don't place any restrictions on it. You're totally accepting of whatever comes up. But here the Buddha's saying no. When mindfulness is really established properly, it stays within its field. It doesn't go out wandering in thoughts of sensuality. And that's part of the definition of the first jhana. You're secluded from thoughts of sensuality. So the establishing of mindfulness and the first jhana overlap. There's another passage where the Buddha's describing the stages of the practice. It's a standard list of the stages, except for one deviation. Where ordinarily the Buddha would be talking about the first jhana, he talks about the 4 establishings of mindfulness instead. He says, for example, that you stay focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. Then, when you can do that, the Buddha says to stay focused on the body in and of itself, But don't think any discursive thoughts related to the body or feelings or mind states. And from putting aside discursive thinking, you go into the second jhana. So he's basically saying that when you establish mindfulness, it's equivalent to the first jhana. Ajahn Lee likes to talk about how evaluation is related to ardency and alertness, and mindfulness is a form of directed thought. In other words, the three qualities that accompany the practice of right mindfulness get turned into factors of jhana. So it's one smooth, seamless practice. It's not as if you do mindfulness practice, and then you stop doing mindfulness practice and start doing concentration. As you're doing mindfulness right, the mind gets into right concentration, so you stay right here. It's simply that you get more solidly right here, more sensitive right here. As you've been working with the breath right here, you get a sense of ease, a sense of fullness, as you allow the breath energies go whatever directions they want. Ajahn Lee says that sometimes they like to spin around in place, sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Well, keep those options in mind as possibilities, so that your cartoon ideas of how the breath works don't get in the way of making it really nice. And as you get more and more sensitive to what's going on, that factor of evaluation that turns into discernment. Here again, in these Zoom meetings that I lead sometimes, every now and then, we get someone who comes from a very different tradition moving in. And they like to talk about how when you do concentration practice, you then drop the concentration and you do insight. But again, there's no clear line drawn between the two. What is insight? Basically, doing concentration with a lot of sensitivity. The Buddha calls it having your theme well in hand. The image he gives is of a person sitting looking at someone lying down, or a person standing looking at someone who's sitting. They're right next to each other, but one is a little bit above, watching what's going on. As you start getting more and more sensitive to your concentration, you begin to see, oh, there are aggregates there. There are different fabrications. They're all there. All the things you're going to need for insight. They're right there. You don't need to go anyplace else. So you've got mindfulness, concentration, and discernment, all in one convenient location. And just that thought should help get you even more focused. You don't have to say, well, I'm going to do mindfulness for a while. And then, gee, when do I switch to concentration? And then, when do I switch to insight? Those aren't decisions you have to make. Everything comes together right here. It's just a question of being more and more sensitive right here, and allowing your imagination to expand right here as to what's possible.